Preparation for a bushfire happens long before the fire arrives. You need to understand your risk on your property, the history of fires in the area, and have your property well prepared long before the fire arrives. What we're about to see is some of the ways you can improve your home's bushfire resilience through improvements to construction. Two of the most important things to think about when looking at the construction of your home are gaps where embers can enter and windows. Windows are very vulnerable in a bushfire from the impact of flame and radiant heat. Let's talk about windows. They're the most vulnerable part of the house. We could build a fireproof house quite easily, only if you accept that it has no doors and windows. Windows, the reason they're vulnerable is glass is very fragile, as you would expect. It gets affected by heat, radiant heat, and by direct flame, and it'll crack. Once it cracks, we've now got an entry point into the house. And once you've got that, embers go into the house and burn the house down from the inside out. And that's probably the most common way that houses burn down in bushfires. People say, I've got a brick house, how did it burn down? It burnt down from the inside out. Embers got through the glass. So in the standards, as you go through the different levels, as it gets higher, the quality and the fire protection of the glass gets higher. The glass gets thicker. It goes from annealed glass, which is just ordinary glass, through to toughened glass and safety glass, and gets far more expensive. So flame zone windows are poisonously expensive. Two ways to do it, either shutters over the windows, and that's an option if you've got a flame zone house and you don't want to spend the incredible amounts of money on flame zone glass, you can put a shutter over it to protect it from that heat, the radiant heat. And there's all sorts of ways of doing that. From very cheap and cheerful, just putting a sheet of tin over it that hangs over it, to motorised ones that can be controlled remotely and things like that. The other way is, and this is in most of the levels in the construction standard, is having screens, and metal screens, obviously, not fiberglass. We've got timber frame windows and a beautiful flat ledge there for the embers to land on and set fire to the timber frame window. What can we do about that? Not much. It's going to be hard to solve that issue.
Get rid of them?
If you're renovating and putting different windows in, you certainly consider something that's a bit more suitable, and more modern style and designed windows would incorporate that automatically. So
Could put a little bit of quad in there.
you could, yeah, quad just round all through there. Other solution is that if this house had sprinklers that were on the walls and protecting the glass, that's not an issue. Shutters, yep. We've got screens on the glass here, which is great, but this glass is unprotected. So radiant heat from there and embers can either heat the glass and crack it, or embers break the glass and that's it. Embers get inside the house is all over. You've got about 9-10 minutes, I think, is the spec. But the ventilation question is a really big thing. There's always a battle when we're designing houses, and especially when we're working on older houses, trying to upgrade them, heritage houses and things like that. There's a battle between the bushfire protection and the builders who want to have ventilation so you don't get rising damp and things like that. One of the big ones is ridge capping in the roof space. So as a bushfire consultant, I want some sort of ceiling on the ridge capping so that embers can't get in. But the builders want airflow in there so it doesn't get damp. I'm looking at the ridge capping and there's 100 gaps.
Yeah, I know.
It might be okay, it might not be okay. We don't know until you get into the roof. Someone goes up there and undoes the tech screws on the ridge capping. It's not a big job, it's not hard, and you put a seal there. Now what you use for a seal could be the mesh like you used, anything that you can put in there that won't burn and will stop the embers from coming in. If you can find a product that allows air to come through, and the rock wool will do that to a certain degree, even better, because that lets your roof breathe. Extractor fans are a fantastic place for the embers to get in. They're quite old. They're probably going to give up the ghost one day, and I would replace them with the new ones that have a self-closing flap on them. They only open when they're operating. On the back of the house is a whirligig.
Yeah, that's the
Roof ventilator, yeah. That's another place where they can get in. Some of those do have a screen built into them, some of them don't. Another thing to investigate and solve. Look at the size of these gaps. And what's in there?
Dead mouse, I suppose. No, there's a metal fly screen.
Yeah, there's obviously something because that's only going in the depth of the brick. Yeah. They have been sealed, so this is good. So you could imagine if that wasn't sealed, that's a massive hole for embers. We buy 10 or 20 bucks worth of fly screen, cut it to the length of the slot, fold it over like that, and poke it in the hole. We've still, because it's fly screen, we've still got ventilation into the wall space, so we've ticked that box, and we've sealed it against embers. Easy. When you win the lottery, start replacing doors with solid timber doors. Yeah. They're less likely to get damaged in the fire, less likely to catch on fire. But the good thing here is the seals at the bottom of the doors. Fantastic. That's an excellent place for embers to get in under the door. And snakes. And we did it yesterday with Kathy's shed, and I think you got a bit of a surprise.
And very newly constructed. It was a replacement from the shed that burnt down.
Mm-hmm.
And it was meant to be built to a bushfire, to be safe from bushfires.
Yeah.
And we walked in and there's 2 gaps that they've left that were very obvious and nothing above the roller door.
Yeah. And then the other place we found was around where these beams come in, and because she's got a veranda type lean-to under the shed, they hadn't sealed around that. And they were big gaps, really big gaps. Other place we found was at the bottom of the walls, and Kathy had already discovered this, and her and her husband have been working on it. The slab only came to there, not to there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So every one of these was exposed at the bottom, and you can stick your finger up there.
So mice, rats, snakes and fire can get into our new shed because they built it differently to how we asked them.
Yeah. So your solution was expanding foam. It works. So we're talking about the seal on the top. Need something up there to seal it against embers. And that's surprisingly quick, cheap and easy to fix. You can buy products off the shelf that aren't that expensive and just screw straight on to fix that. Underneath, you need a seal there. Brand new roller doors come with a seal that works pretty well, but older ones, they deteriorate, so it's a maintenance thing. Let's pretend that's the underside of the house. Yep. And we've got exposed timber joists and timber floor. What can we do? You can put sprinklers under the house, and houses in Victoria were saved from that. That works. The other thing you can do is to seal the underside of the floor with something like fibro cement. So you put that on the bottom side of the floor framing, and then you've sealed all. It's now all non-combustible on the other side. That's not really going to work on the deck because it's open on the top as well. We've got a timber veranda. What's special about verandas? They're flat. What happens on flat verandas? Embers land on them, they don't roll away. They get blown around in here. If one's over here, law just ends up next to the wall, sets fire to the veranda, the wall's on fire, the house is gone. You've all read the first thing to do in the fire is take the mat, chuck it away, because the mat catches on fire, sets fire to the house. Housekeeping around your home is very important. Keeping access clear and flammable materials away from your home will make protecting your home much easier. Keeping your place really neat and tidy around the place and removing these little hazards is really important. And the one I noticed here, that's all built up in behind the tanks. That's what's going to catch on fire, set fire to the tank stand, set fire to the wall. So when things start to deteriorate, you see timbers starting to crack there. We've now got a little ledge in there where embers can sit. The board at the top here, it's probably okay at the moment, but in time, as the paint comes off, keep it painted. The paint will give you some protection. We haven't got bare timber. There's another really big ember point here. Excellent points for embers to get in. I haven't been in there yet. I know it's a timber floor underneath there. I don't know what sort of stumps there are.
They're brick.
Brick?
Yeah.
But timber floor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just as the house will burn down really quickly if there's a fire in the roof space, the same underneath.
Yeah.
One of the things that is a danger point for windows and glass is vegetation up close to the glass. This is pretty good. But if you can imagine this rose, if it was allowed to grow, it was right up to here. If this caught on fire, we've got a fire directly below the glass, and you can almost guarantee that glass will crack. Luckily, we've got a screen, so it's all good, but you do have to maintain vegetation around glass. So this table here, if this had been here during the fire and caught on fire, it's right in front of the window. That's it, the window's gone. Yeah, it's building a fire under the window. See the valley gutter?
Yeah.
Nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Collects leaves. It's more entry points. Really hard to seal. It's a balance between aesthetics and protection. It's a balance between ease of maintenance and aesthetics. But yeah, a lot of new houses I see are a lot worse than this. They have jutting out pieces. What would you call that? Bay windows and things that come out, and the roofs overhang the roof beneath, and you end up with this space where one roof comes out, another roof is maybe a foot below it and 2 foot deep. And how do you clean that?
With your blower again.
With your blower. That's the only way you can do it. Or lay down and reach in to get it. It's just a nightmare. Solar hot water, again, I'll be a little bit concerned about what's being trapped underneath that, if there's leaves and things. You're pretty clear around here. Yeah, my place is surrounded by trees, and I know that there'd be a leaf build-up underneath that. I've got solar panels on the roof of my shed, and they're the best leaf collectors I've ever seen in my life. The only way, you can't get a broom in there or anything else like that because the gap's not wide enough. I've got a backpack blower, and I go up on the roof and I blow them from the top and try and blow them out that way. There was a fire in Victoria called the Wye River Fire down on the Great Ocean Road. A little community right with the water across the road, basically. Beautiful place. I think they lost 90 houses. And of those, most of them were weekenders, so they were unoccupied. They had landscaping issues, so they're all in a little valley surrounding, looking out at the water. Timber sleepers everywhere, close to the house. Nobody there to check on it, nobody there to put it out when those sleepers caught on fire and then spread to the house. But then the other main cause was crap under the house. Everybody had stuff, canoes and kayaks, the lawnmower, all the extra spare timber that was left over from the last project. Are you game to open the door and let us have a look? It's all concrete. So that'll burn, that'll burn, that'll burn, that'll burn, that'll burn. What's above it? Timber frame, chipboard floor. House is gone. With gas is another thing, so your gas supply, there's the obvious things you've probably all heard about putting the gas bottle so the vent points away from the house, but also that all the fittings should be metal. And there's actually a standard. So if it's put in by a plumber or a gas fitter, it's probably okay.
All facing out with the release valve facing outwards.
I think it might have been a different story if they'd been around this side of the house and they're protected by the house.
That is why they were put there in the first place, I would say, that people realise where the danger would be from,
Yeah, so they were shielded a bit by the house from heat. I hate to think what...
Because the kitchen's over that side, so it would have been better to put it over there, but I think they realised where to put it,
Yeah. And your choice of materials in the gardening too, in the garden, what you use for mulch. Obviously, a gravel or rock mulch is the best. Wood chip is not as bad as you might think. It's not perfect. Obviously, it'll still burn, but it won't burn as ferociously and as quickly as if you had grass or a ground cover. So don't totally discount wood chip. Trees that might fall on the house. I'm a bit concerned about that tree there, even from here. It looks a bit sick. I'd be checking that out a bit further to make sure it's not an issue. A, because it might fall on the house, but because of what I can see from here, I think that would catch fire very easily. Sheds and other outbuildings need to be at least 6 metres away from your home. You really don't want your shed to be the thing that burns down your house. Sheds don't have a construction standard as such, unless they're within 6 metres of the house. So if this was more than 6 metres away from the house, you can do whatever you want. If it's within that 6 metres, it needs to be built to the same standard as the house. Why am I so worried about those Zincalume garden sheds burning down?
Because of what's in them and they explode.
Well, what do you put in a garden shed? The lawnmower, the fuel, the chainsaw, all those things that go bang. A few of the other houses we've been to have had garden sheds and not horrible things in them. One of them only had hay and chook food in it, but that generated enough heat to melt the steel walls. And once that happens, if it's too close to the house, we've got a problem. Now, the cabinet of spray paints over there would be quite spectacular if it went up.
It's amazing how much radiant heat can do. So something like those TNZ, they possibly could be quite a problem for you.
From heat from the outside. Yeah.
Which is where the fire predominantly comes from.
From the outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So from
When
the
the
outside,
corrugated gets hot.
just the radiant heat alone could cause you a problem.
And you only need one to go off, and then that perfect storm of one of those is venting, and then there's another ignition source from an ember or something inside here, and away we go. Sprinkler systems can be a very effective way of protecting your home. The challenge in a sprinkler system is who's going to turn it on and how much water you have to supply the sprinklers. The gold standard is all copper piping, all metal sprinkler heads, so that they don't melt or burn. But when it all comes down to it, if you've got something, that's better than nothing.
So I just said they've had those, the ones, you flat ones that spin like a Catherine wheel. They had them on the side of the house.
Yep.
That was interesting.
I'm completely cool with that. And what we've also talked about is sprinklers hide a multitude of sins. So a lot of houses have got really big problems for bushfire protection. And the answer is sprinklers. It's too hard or too costly to fix all the problems, but we can overcome them to a large degree with sprinklers. So I'll keep saying it, sprinklers, sprinklers, sprinklers.
My issue is that so my sprinklers are connected to the bore, so that's okay. But there's a pump, an electric pump.
The problem with sprinklers, this one's powered by electricity. What's the first thing to go in the bushfire? Electricity. Even the generator. If there's something that just sits there for emergencies and hasn't been started for 2 years, there's no way it's going to start. If you're going to have a system like that with a petrol or a diesel pump, try and design it into your household so that it's something you use on a regular basis. So if it's something you use to transfer water from that tank to another tank over there, that it gets started once every 2 weeks, every month. We know that the sprinklers work, but we haven't solved the issue of activation. Who's going to turn them on? I think what we've come to conclude over the last couple of weekends is that sprinklers are the be-all and end-all. They solve all these horrible problems, and there's ways of doing it. They're relatively cheap.
I can just say too, we spoke about it before, petrol fire pumps are great, but with the fire that came through, they can have air blockages. You can afford a diesel, because they'll run and run and run. Yeah. Whereas when you got a hot day and you got air blockage, and they can cut out. So diesel pump, if you can afford it, about twice the price of a petrol pump, but they're guaranteed to run in any conditions.
If you were to put sprinklers, where would you put them in this kind of construction?
On the windows.
Oh,
Yep.
we had them on the roof.
You see people up on the roof and their stubbies and thongs hosing down the roof. What the hell are you doing? The tin's not going to burn.
Okay.
Sprinklers, if you haven't got your ridge cap sealed, might help that. If you've got a misting type thing over the top, they might wet the embers before they get a chance to get in and hopefully put them out. you want the gutters filled,
I've got bungs.
because what happens if anything catches on fire in the gutter, and it might be that your gutters are clean, but you still have embers landing in there, the seal between the end of the roof and the gutter, that's a very difficult spot to seal. And a lot of places you have exposed timber there even. So that's a problem. So filling the gutters with water is a good thing. The best value from the sprinklers is if you've got decks and things like that around the house. So say you've got a timber deck, if you've got something that's wetting down the timber deck and keeping that damp, that's fantastic. You've solved the problem. But as I said before, the windows are the most vulnerable part. So if you had a system of sprinklers around here and mostly spraying onto the windows to keep them cool, that would be fantastic. So that is another good protection for the house. Problem is we've got a timber veranda on the other side, timber deck.
So what would you do with that?
The timber deck? I think this is a really good place for the sprinklers. Along here.
On the roof.
Yeah, the underside of the roof. Yep. And then we can take advantage of not just protecting the deck, but protecting the windows as well. And any other gaps, or we can solve a whole lot of problems in one go. During the last few weekends, I've been talking about sprinklers on walls and windows and things, but the number of people have told me about the sprinklers out here as well. I'm starting to really think about those. A combination is probably the go.
Is it expensive to install the kind of systems?
No. If you get somebody a plumber in to do it, it's going to cost you a lot of money. If you do it, and the system that I suggested to my sister-in-law at Bilpin is not a lot of money. As far as materials, and using poly pipe, but putting it in places where it's shielded from the heat, using the sprinkler heads that I advised her to get, which are, we come from that shop again, Bunnings. They're brass, and they either have a slot on one side so they spray out 180 degrees, or a slot pretty much all the way around so they spray 360 degrees. They're about $5 each. So when you add it all up, enough poly pipe to go around the house and some shielding here and there, you might be looking at $300, $400, $500 worth of materials. And then if you can install it yourself, and it is pretty easy, it's all plug and play stuff, it's done. If you pay a plumber to do that in copper or gal, and at plumber's rates, the equivalent thing might end up costing you 5, 10, 15,000. Gordon's got poly, which generally would be a no-no, but he's protected it with some top hat steel, which is just a happy days, fantastic. Is it perfect doing it in poly? No, there's a possibility that it will fail, but it's a lot better than having nothing. It's a requirement, is that all of your above ground water pipes are metal, not poly. My outside taps are on a riser coming up from the ground. You've got a section of hard poly, 1 inch, and it's threaded at both ends that high. You just go to Bunnings, you can buy that in a gal pipe, unscrew the whole thing like a big Meccano set, screw the metal piece in, metal top, done.
I have heard too with the plastic water tanks, some people put color bond shields around it in effect. Yeah.
Does everybody know what happens to plastic tanks in a fire? Yeah. Down to the water level. Yeah.
I had 4 20,000 litre tanks. One survived, and all the others, I lost 60,000 litres. Plastic tanks. They just melted, went to the ground.
And full of water.
Full of water.
Right.
So don't anybody tell you that full of water doesn't matter. All it needs is a weak spot, and once it collapses, then the heat got to it. Yeah.
It's a pretty good indication of how much radiant heat you were getting. It must have been massive.
Even with the new steel tanks, they've indicated that radiant heat will damage the internals of them, and therefore they can become useless too, because they've got a coating on the inside. It melts. Your tank is, and not only that, but the joints become compromised. So steel tank, the argument I've heard is the best tank you can have is a plastic tank in the ground with a cap on it, because it won't go anywhere. Steel tanks will be fire damaged, and if it's got the coating on the inside, that coating on the inside gets damaged and you end up getting leaks. So
That's that sort of membrane.
the membrane on the inside, yeah.
It's like colour bond, but it's a coating on the steel.
Yeah.
I've had tanks it's called aquaplate.
That's what it is. That's what it is
It's
in yours.
a coating on the steel that makes it suitable for drinking water. It's also corrosion protection. If you'd like more information, go to the RFS website or the Association of Bell, Clarence and Dargan website, which are on the screen now. We hope you all have a safe journey through this bushfire summer.